Hello, and thank you for taking the time to watch this video. In this video, we're going to cover the following item: adding and removing sensors in the RLE WiNG-MGR V2 appliance. So in this video, I'm going to use Chrome to run through our example. So I'm just going to head over to Chrome, double left click. Once the browser window opens, we'll put in the IP address of our WiNG-MGR. So type this in here. Once the login screen comes up, we'll put in our username and password. I have mine saved, so as soon as I type in A for admin, I'll just select that. With the non-default password, click on login. So going through on this example, we're going to start off with the first sensor listed in here, this TS01, which is a temp sensor located in a break room. So there's a couple different reasons why you might have to remove an existing sensor from its index or slot and replace it with another sensor. In this one, I'm just going to delete out the current information, and then we're going to put some information back in to repopulate it. But let's say if a sensor was damaged, missing, failed, you could go through and remove that sensor type and replace it with the same sensor type. That way you don't cause a big gap in data and reprogramming if you're communicating the WiNG-MGR to another front end type system. So in order to remove a sensor from the system, you want to come to the admin, which you would have to be logged in as an administrator. So we're going to left click. Once this screen pulls up for admin, we'll come over to sensors. Once the sensors highlights, we'll left click. Once the screen opens up, we scroll down a little bit. You can see add delete sensors. So at the very top, you see delete selected sensors. So it gives you a start position and an end position. This is convenient if you had something going on with the WiNG-MGR and you had to delete a series of sensors, like a consecutive block. You could put the beginning index position and the end index position to get rid of a larger segment. In this example, we're just doing the one sensor, so we're just going to put in start position of 1, then we'll go to an end position of 1. Once we have that selected, just come down and click on the red delete button. You'll get a dialog asking you if you're sure. So you get one warning before doing a delete. So in this case we are, so we're going to click on OK. You don't see anything pop up on the screen, but it's gone through the process to delete that sensor out. So now if we go back over to sensors, you can see that that index 1 position is now empty. We just see 2 through 6. So in order to put a new sensor back in place, you would want to take the sensor out of its box, pull the battery block tab, watch the little blue light flash on the front to show that it's communicating. On the left-hand side of the plastic housing, there's a serial number that has a barcode right above it. So you'll need to have that serial number. So we'll go back to the admin tab, scroll down, and at the very bottom right-hand side of the screen, you see add a sensor. So we're going to click on the blue add button. You'll see add sensor serial number in here. So then we're going to click inside the field. The serial number to enter back inside the WiNG-MGR is not case sensitive. So you can either use uppercase or lowercase for your characters. So here we're going to type in D97 DE66B. Once we have that entered, you can always double check it if you like, and then we'll click on the Save Changes. And we can see that the serial number has been added to the number 1 position. The WiNG-MGR will always look to see what is the lowest available slot open to add a sensor back in. So in this case, we have this populated back in here and it populated into slot 1. We can close that window. So now if we go back to sensors, we can see that we have sensor 1 in place. And just from an initial glance, we can double check. We can see our serial number. We can see the sensor type. We can see the reading being displayed by that sensor, and we can see the age, the battery voltage, and the green thumbs up that everything is working as expected. So if this was the only sensor that we needed to do, then we can come back inside here and we can left click on the name, and then we can update as far as the sensor name and location. So in order to do that, we just left click, come over to the fourth tab, sensor configuration, left click, and here we can update the sensor name. So this one, I'll name it exactly how it was before. So we go 001-WYAN-TS-01. And then I have this called out as the break room sensor. You can also go through at this point and you can set your alarm notifications as far as temp, over, under, any alarm delays, if you're triggering any relay action based on that alarm. And then we also have these offline delay that you can update through here, any sort of warnings, and if you wanted to fine tune that displayed reading coming through on the sensor, you can adjust that here. So in this case, I'm just going to click on Save Changes. So once we have that saved, come back over to Sensors. And now we can see that our official name and location has been updated. We can see that everything is still communicating properly. If you ever like, you can always watch it as far as based on the refresh, as far as seeing that age change. So that's one method of going through for deleting a sensor and adding a sensor back in. Another thing that we can do going through, depending on how many sensors that you wanted to update, and again, we'll use sensor 1 for our example, is we could come through and go to admin. Then on here, we're going to go to this sensor page. And here on the left-hand side, we can see that we can actually download a CSV file. So we come to the blue button, we click on download. We see this populates in the browser. Easiest way to save this CSV file to our local machine is just right-click, click on Save As. In this example, I'm going to change the name from sensors.csv, and I'm going to call it WiNG-MGR, and then use the last of the IP, 226. Click on Save. We'll close this tab. So now I can come through here, go to our folder location, open the CSV up in Excel. Just for demo purposes, I'm just going to expand this out. So once this opens, let's scroll on a little bit. We can see that we have the index 1, and it's calling out all that data. So what we can do is we can actually copy. Again, this is just showing an example if you had to do like a cleanup in the system. So we're going to remove that sensor information from the Excel sheet. So we could do this with a big block if we had a chunk or certain segments going through that we had to remove sensors for doing some cleanup, and we wanted to do some re-indexing. You can clean this up from the sheet. So then we're just going to save the file, close it. We'll also close the File Explorer. So then kind of showing that path again, if we come back to sensors, we can see that sensor 1 is in the position, is communicating. So now we're going to come down to admin, left click on that. Brings us back down to that sensors page. So now we can go upload sensor CSV. So we're going to go choose file. We'll select that CSV file that we have stored on our local machine. Click on open, click on upload. It's going to tell you that it's processing. It takes a few seconds depending on how many things that you're updating inside the system. So now we're going to click on the hyperlink here. Returns us back to the main screen. and we see that that sensor is no longer listed. So then if we wanted to add it back in, say if we were doing a update or adding to some new open indexes, we had new sensors, and you didn't want to use the auto discovery option or go through the web interface doing one at a time, what we can do is we just add them back in on the sheet. And one of the cool things RLE did on this, again, let me expand this, scroll in a little bit, make it easier to see. You don't have to know the ID type and the type model or name here. You can actually leave all this set to the default unknown 0x00. All you need to know is the serial number. So same as we did in the first example, we can go through, and it's not case sensitive. So if you wanted to do uppercase, you can, or you can do lower, whatever is most convenient for you. So in this case, I'll just leave it as lower. So we'll go D97 DE66B. If we knew the label name, we could update that now in here, or we could do it through the web interface. Because when you add the sensor back in, that means you would have to repopulate any sort of alarm thresholds and other things. So it's not a bad practice that you can just plug your serial number in on this cell, and then you can fill out all the other data once that sensor is communicating properly to the Wing Manager. So in this, we'll leave everything else blank. We're just going to do the serial number. I'm going to save, we'll close the file explorer, come back down to admin, go over to sensors, go to choose file for our upload, select the file, click on open, click on upload. It's going through the process. If there was something fat fingered or something wrong with any of the information coming through, you'll get an error coming on this dialog showing that it's unable to process. So now we're going to go to the hyperlink, returns us to the main screen, and there's our sensor. We can watch it for a little bit and make sure it's communicating properly. And there's the refresh where it cycled itself back around with that heartbeat. So we'll go back to sensor 1, sensor configuration, going through here, and then we'll update our sensor name. Type it in right. And this one I'm just going to, these transmit about every 10 to 20 seconds. So I'm going to put a 2-minute delay into there. And then I'm going to click on Save Changes. I'm going to go back to Sensors. And there it is. So one of the other things that we'll go through on this example is if you ever wanted to shift sensors around, what you can do is click on a sensor position. Say for whatever reason something is not indexed right. If you look down here, you'll see Move Sensor Position to. So if I wanted to scoot this from position 1 to position 7, I can just put in that new index location, click on Save Changes, showing that it's saving. So now we can see it blanked out 1. So if we come back inside here, now we see it down at 7. Then if I wanted to put it back into that position, I can go through. So right now we're in index 7. Put it back to 1. Click on Save. It's going to process the change. We see now that 7 is blank. Go back to our main screen. It's back in position 1. Right now, with it shifting from that position back in, we see that it caught the signal from the sensor itself, and now it's updated and it's streaming data back to the Wing Manager. Another option you have for bringing sensors online, and on this one, I'm going to use sensor number 3. We'll delete this one out. So if we come inside here, we can see nothing is set except for the sensor name and the location. So if we wanted to get rid of sensor 3, go to Admin, Sensors, Start Position of 3, End Position of 3, click on Delete. We are sure. Come back to the sensor page. Now we see that we have 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. So if I wanted to actually use the sensor discovery that you didn't want to type in any information, what we can do is we can actually turn on sensor discovery either from this icon on the upper right hand side, or you can go to Admin, Sensors, and you can turn on sensor discovery here. So in this example, we'll just click on sensor auto discovery on, click on the save changes. Only takes a couple seconds. You won't see any sort of pop-up letting you know that it's on now. Come back to sensors, and in that time that we turned it back on, it repopulated it back into the position. So then if we wanted to update the data for that sensor, we can just left click, come back inside here, where this one was a little bit different. This was in index 3, so we're going to go 003 WYAN-THS-01, and this one was in the office. Save the changes, click on sensors. Now our information is updated back on here. Depending on how your Wing Manager V2 is being used in your facility, it's always a good practice not to leave sensor discovery on, depending on if you're in a shared building with other tenants that might be using a similar type technology, that you don't end up reading in someone else's sensors into your gateway. Then you're trying to do some cleanup work of what's yours and what's potentially someone else's. So anytime when you in a shared environment, it's always good practice to make sure our sensor discovery is shut off. So we're going to go back to admin. Returned us back to the sensors page. So on this, we're just going to click on off. Scroll down a little bit. Close that. And click on Save Changes. That way we don't pick up some rogue sensors potentially. And then one of the good practices going through, once you've gone through and you have everything updated within the system, not a bad idea to go through and just download a fresh CSV list. That way you can keep stored somewhere. And if you come back up and you click on this firmware tab, you can actually download a global configuration for how this Wing Manager is configured. That way, in case something was ever to happen to the unit, or someone went in, made some changes and something got skewed, you can just come back in. You can upload that master config file. So downloading a config file, pretty straightforward. We just come to download. As soon as it opens up, you can see it uses a default name of WiNG-MGR.CFG. So depending on what type of name you want to apply to it, on this I'm going to do WiNG-MGR 226. Click on Save. Takes a few seconds to process, but once processed, now you have a master configuration file for this appliance. Well, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Any questions, feel free to reach out to fmsintegration.com, and we'd be glad to answer any questions you may have. Thank you, and have a great day.